This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm 32, and I've dedicated my career to studying wildlife behavior. I moved out here from the Midwest because I thought the North Cascades would be perfect for my research. I set up my cabin near a grazing area where ranchers complained about some odd happenings with their sheep. I figured I could get a good look at how animals react under stress. Honestly, I've never stopped thinking about it since. It was a still night, and I remember stepping outside to look at the stars. They felt so close. Then, I heard it. The frantic bleating of sheep echoed in the distance, rising and falling until it just stopped. I felt my heart pound. But instead of going to check, I froze, unsure if it was really happening. I don't know why, but I went back inside thinking maybe it was just a bad dream. The morning came too quickly. I left my cabin to check on the sheep. I couldn't prepare myself for the sight that greeted me. There they were, 47 sheep, all motionless in their pens. I didn't know what to think. Was this some sort of sickness? I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone, just dead. I could only stand there, my mind racing, trying to grasp what had happened. I decided to investigate. I searched the area for tracks. Maybe a predator? There were strange prints around the pens, but they didn't match anything I recognized. My hands shook as I took pictures. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I spent the day asking locals about strange occurrences, but they wouldn't talk. Their faces went pale when I mentioned the sheep. It left me confused and a little scared. That night I was back at my cabin. I tried to sleep, but shadows crept in on the edge of my vision. I thought I heard something outside, but when I looked, there was nothing. My heart raced, and my skin felt cold. It felt like the woods were watching. I thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. Still, I dismissed it and tried to stay focused on my work. To my horror, the next morning brought even worse news. More sheep were missing. I felt dread wash over me. I thought about what could be lurking in the shadows. I felt as though something was closing in on me. Each night I was left feeling more isolated and trapped. I wanted to leave, but deep down, I knew I had to find out what was really going on. Then I heard a soft tapping at my window. My heart sank. I wasn't feeling brave anymore. I turned, and as I stood there frozen, I noticed something moving just outside. Shapes waiting in the dark. I felt ice coursing through my veins. They weren't animals. They looked human but twisted. Their skin was pale, their eyes were dark and hollow. They stood there, swaying slightly, and I wanted to scream but couldn't. As I backed away, a voice whispered my name, soft and airy. I couldn't see who it was. I barely had time to reconsider before they rushed toward me, disappearing into the shadows. I realized I was not the only one researching this place. Whatever they were, I had stumbled into a darkness that had taken the sheep and was now coming for me. I hardly slept that night. I kept my lights on, pacing the small cabin, wrestling with my thoughts. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the mind, shadowy figures, the whispers. But the image of those strange beings wouldn't leave me. I spent the hours until dawn staring at the wall, too scared to look outside again. When morning light finally crept into my cabin, it felt different. The air was thick, saturated with a sense of urgency. I took a deep breath, deciding I had to check on the sheep again, despite the horrifying events of the previous night. As I walked outside, I was met with an eerie silence. The usual sounds of the forest were muted, as if the world was holding its breath. I approached the pens, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. The ground was littered with remnants of hay, but the pens were empty. No sheep. Panic surged through me. Had they vanished overnight too? I stumbled back, eyes scanning the area for prints or any signs of where they might have gone. That's when I saw it. A faint trail leading into the woods just past the edge of the grazing area. The prints left in the damp earth looked different from anything I'd seen before. They were foot-like but elongated with 3 long toes, unlike anything in my field guide. I took a quick photo and felt a chill seep into my bones. Against my better judgment, I followed the trail. As I moved deeper into the trees, the canopy closed overhead, blocking out the sun and leaving me in a twilight gloom. Each step felt heavier. I could hear nothing but the faint crunching of twigs underfoot. My heart raced as shadows danced in my peripheral vision. Suddenly, I stopped. There were whispers, indistinct, floating through the trees. It was hard to tell where they were coming from. I edged closer, curiosity battling against fear. That's when I noticed them, dark figures moving between the trunks. My breath caught in my throat. They were here again. I wanted to run, but something compelled me to stay. I strained to hear, trying to make sense of their words. A chill ran down my spine when I realized they were speaking about me. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the tone was sharp, calculating. Whatever they were, they had a purpose, and I was part of it. The researcher, she's seen too much. One voice said, the cadence like a haunting melody. My mind raced. What did they know? Why were they after me? Just then a sharp snap broke the silence. A branch had fallen nearby. I turned quickly, adrenaline flooding my senses. The figures scurried away, fading into the shadows before I could catch another glance. I stood frozen, fists clenched, desperate to understand but filled with dread. Then, from the ground, I noticed something glimmering. I knelt to investigate and uncovered a small metal object. It looked like a locket, tarnished and worn, but the design was intricate. As I opened it, a chill gripped my heart. Inside was a picture of a group of people, smiling faces. There was something familiar about them, something unsettling. My head spun. What had I stumbled into? I could feel the shadows creeping back. The darkness wasn't finished with me yet. I could almost sense their eyes on me, watching, waiting. The forest felt alive around me, a closeness that both comforted and terrified. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the trees. The ground shook. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the locket. Whatever was happening, it was just beginning. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, gasping for breath. My heart hammered in my chest. I was back in the cabin, the morning sun filtering through the cracks in the walls. Everything felt surreal. Had it all been a dream? I sat up slowly, scanning the room, bracing myself for the realities that awaited. The locket was clutched tightly in my hand, its cold metal somehow grounding me. I took a deep breath and stood, forcing my legs to move. I needed to know if the sheep were gone for good. The sound of my own footsteps felt too loud in the tense silence of the cabin. When I stepped outside, the bright sunshine was blinding. I squinted, the world looking far too normal. I rushed to the pens, dread pooling in my stomach again. Perhaps they had returned, or maybe it had all been a nightmare. But no. The pens were just as empty as before. A low sense of despair washed over me. Not only had my flock vanished, but now those bizarre figures felt closer than ever. They were real, and whatever they were planning was far beyond my understanding. I turned to the forest, to the path where I'd followed the trail of footprints. They were a haunting reminder. I could never forget the whispers. I stood there for a moment, wrestling with the urge to run back to the safety of my cabin. But I knew I had to face this. I couldn't let panic dictate my actions. I pulled out my phone and reviewed the photos I'd taken, studying the prints in the mud. I zoomed in and compared them to online images. I was almost sure they didn't belong to any known animal, at least not any I'd ever researched. With shaky hands, I decided to head back to where I found the locket. I wanted answers, and maybe retracing my steps would lead me to something, or someone. As I walked deeper into the woods, the weight of the locket swung against my chest. It felt alive, pulsing with a mystery I couldn't grasp. The whispers returned, swirling around me like leaves in the wind. Panic flared, but I forced myself to stay calm, focusing on the rustle of the trees instead. They beckoned me forward, just a bit further. What was hidden beneath the surface of the forest? After a short trek, I arrived at a small clearing. It was here that I stumbled upon what appeared to be remnants of a camp, a fire pit surrounded by scorched earth. Broken branches lay scattered, as if something had rushed through without regard. And then, on the ground, something caught my eye. A piece of material that looked like fabric. I bent down to pick it up, shaking off dirt. It was thick, weather-worn. The patterns reminded me of something, maybe clothing. A strange instinct told me this was connected to the figures I had seen. As I turned to examine the rest of the area, A wave of nausea hit me. My eyes widened in horror when I found more locket-like objects half buried in the soil. I scrutinized them closely, each with a small photo inside. The same smiles greeted me in every one. They were the faces from the first locket. That's when I heard it. A loud crack echoing through the trees like thunder striking too close. The wind picked up suddenly, spinning around me with a hiss, as if the forest itself warned me to flee. I should have listened. I barely had time to react before the shadows surged from the trees, 3 dark figures emerging into the clearing, closing in on me. I stood frozen, heart racing, breath caught in my throat. This was it. The darkness had found me again, and there was no escape. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, paralyzed by fear. The figures approached, their outlines shifting and unnatural. I could barely make out their faces. Everything about them seemed wrong. They loomed larger, and I finally forced my legs to act, stumbling backward. "Wait!" I shouted, my voice trembled. I didn't even know why I yelled. It felt like a plea, a desperate grab for a moment to think. Their movements halted. For a split second, I saw one of them cock its head, as if considering my words. I seized the moment to turn and sprint deeper into the woods, adrenaline flooding my veins. The branches whipped against my face as I pushed through the underbrush. The sound of my pounding heart drowned out the whispers around me. I didn't look back. I just ran. But that moment of hesitation haunted me. I could feel their presence just beyond my peripheral vision. I was convinced they were right behind me. Every instinct screamed to keep going, to not stop until I reached the end of the forest, wherever that was. I dodged trees and rocks, the uneven ground tripping me again and again. I couldn't afford to slow down. My breath came in jagged gasps, and every time I stumbled, fear surged like an icy grip around my throat. Finally, I spotted a clearing ahead. The light spilled in, casting an inviting glow. It felt like a sanctuary, a place where the shadows couldn't reach. I burst into the opening, gasping for air, and skidded to a halt. That's when I saw it. A large boulder jutting up from the ground, its sides etched with strange symbols. I staggered toward it, heart racing. As I noticed the locket in my hand felt warmer. What was happening? The air grew thick, a low hum vibrating in my ears. I reached out to touch the rock, and that's when the feeling hit me. It was like a wave washing over my mind, filling it with images from the past, fragments of lives intertwined with the land, of laughter and warmth, twisted with pain. But they felt distant, like a dream that was fading too quickly. I didn't understand. The symbols pulsed under my fingertips. Panic surged again, and I pulled my hand back, but not before my gaze caught something beneath the edge of the boulder. A hidden compartment. I knelt down, heart pounding. I pulled at the stone and it shifted. My breath caught as I saw a box nestled in the nook. It was old, covered in dirt and moss. Could it hold answers, or more questions? But the shadows were back, crawling into the clearing, inching toward me once more. This was my chance. I could either hide or dive deeper into the unknown. I reached for the box, fingers trembling. I felt more than fear. I felt curiosity igniting. I twisted the lid open. Inside lay a collection of small objects, more lockets, but these were different. I saw a key, covered in intricate designs, and scraps of weathered paper. Before I could comprehend the significance, the whispers intensified, and I realized the figures were nearly upon me. No longer shadows. They were solid, their intentions dark and unreadable. I could sense the urgency. I had to decide quickly. I clutched the box tightly and stood, ready to face whatever came next. The moment I stood, the figures froze, their shapes now clearer, almost tangible. They seemed to hover, their faces twisted in expressions I couldn't decipher. Sorrow, anger, or perhaps something far worse. I felt their eyes boring into me, and it made my skin crawl. I glanced at the box. The key inside felt weighty, pulsing with some unseen energy. The locket in my hand still radiated warmth, as though urging me to connect the dots. My fear had morphed into fierce curiosity. Perhaps these objects held the secret to my survival. But what was the secret? Was it worth uncovering? I took a step back, scanning the clearing. It felt small now, like the walls were closing in. The whispers grew louder, echoing around me like a cacophony of lost souls. There was no way to hide. I had to confront them. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice trembling with trepidation. My heart was pounding, and the box in my grip felt like it might slip from my fingers. Everything fell silent. I held my breath, waiting for an answer that never came. Instead, the air crackled with tension. One of the figures, that one with the tilted head, stepped forward. Its face twisted into a grotesque mask, lips moving, but no sound came out. I felt a chill run down my spine. Then a sudden rush of wind swept through the clearing, as if the forest was exhaling. It rattled the branches overhead, sending a shower of leaves cascading around me. I gripped the box tighter. In that moment, another fragment of memory crashed over me, images flooding my mind. I saw the locket I was holding. A woman stood near the boulder, her face serene, and then, blood. It was a flash, brief and jagged, but it left a mark. I knew in my bones that something terrible had happened here before. As my mind reeled, I noticed the figures were drawing closer, moving as if pulled by an invisible string. They weren't just watching anymore. They were coming for me. I felt frantic, the urge to flee battling against the need to know what lay within the box. I had to make a choice. "Leave me alone," I yelled, summoning a burst of defiance, and turned back to the box. Maybe the key unlocked a way to escape this nightmare. I plunged my hand inside, fumbling around the objects until my fingers brushed against the key. The whispers escalated, and the figures surged forward. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I snatched the key from the box. In that instant, I saw it. A dark entrance at the base of the boulder, almost camouflaged. Could it lead to safety, or deeper into whatever torment awaited me? Before I could think, I darted toward it, my instincts taking over. The ground felt uneven, and my breath hitched as I dove for the opening, praying I wasn't too late. As I slipped inside, the whispers turned to wails. The last thing I heard was the screech of that twisted figure as darkness enveloped me. The air inside the dark entrance felt stale and damp. I landed on something soft, and it took me a moment to realize it was dirt, coated with a layer of moss. Scrambling to my feet, I brushed off the remnants of leaves and twigs clinging to my clothes. I took a deep breath, the stillness pressing down on me like a weight. It was eerily quiet. The sounds of the forest above had faded into silence, replaced by a dull throbbing in my ears. I reached for the locket, gripping it tightly, hoping its warmth would provide some comfort. My instinct to explore kicked in, and I took a cautious step deeper into the darkness. I slowly moved forward, straining my eyes to adjust. The walls of the tunnel were rough, and my fingers grazed over ancient markings carved into the stone. Shapes and symbols, some unfamiliar and others vaguely frightening, seemed to pulse with a life of their own. That's when I saw it, a faint glimmer ahead. I moved toward it, curiosity outweighing my fear. My heart raced as I stepped into the small chamber that opened up at the end of the tunnel. What I found made me freeze. In the center stood a pedestal, and atop it lay a translucent crystal orb, glowing softly with an inner light. It was mesmerizing, and I couldn't help but approach. I felt the pull of the orb, its light drawing me in. But what was it? A source of power? A trap? Questions swirled in my mind. Suddenly the air shifted. I turned, startled by a noise echoing from the tunnel behind me. The wailing had returned, louder this time, resonating through the chamber and chilling me to the bone. I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Just as I thought to run, shadows slithered into the cave, creeping along the walls until they stopped in front of me. The figures had followed me. I swallowed hard, trying to hold myself steady. The orb pulsed brighter in response to their presence. I felt its energy tug at my very being, as if it recognized me. Then, one of the figures stepped forward, its face now more distinct, though still twisted in anguish. It reached out a hand, pointing at the orb. "It's like they want me to take it," I muttered, not sure whether to trust them or run away. Then another wave of chilling whispers flooded the chamber, drowning out my thoughts. I couldn't decipher their words, but the sense of urgency was clear. Something was about to happen, something monumental. I took a hesitant step toward the orb, feeling the weight of every decision pressing down on me. That's when the whispers shifted. They transformed from a haunting chorus into a single voice. It spoke with a deep resonance that echoed within me. Unlock the past to change the future. Suddenly the figures lunged, moving in unison toward the orb. Panic surged through me as I realized they were drawing closer, and I had mere moments to decide. I could either reach for the orb, risking everything, or escape through the tunnel behind me. Before I could think, the orb flickered, casting trembling shadows that danced around the cave walls, and I knew whatever I chose would change everything. I didn't have time to think. Instinct took over and I leaped toward the orb, feeling a rush of energy surge through the air as I moved. At the very instant my fingers brushed against the cool surface of the crystal, a shockwave swept through the chamber. The walls reverberated with a deep rumble, and the figures halted their advance, suspended in mid-lunge. The wave of energy enveloped me, pulling me deeper into the orb's light. I felt weightless, as if I were being drawn into another realm. The cries of the figures morphed into a cacophony of emotions: anger, sorrow, fear. I gasped, the power of their feelings hitting me like a tidal wave. Images flashed before my eyes. Strange events and memories, not all of them mine, fused together. A village engulfed in flames. Dark figures moving through shadows. A symbol similar to the carvings on the walls. What was happening? I felt like I was both nowhere and everywhere at once. Then just as quickly the images pulled back. I gasped as I was thrown back into the chamber. I landed hard on the stone floor, the orb flickering dangerously above me. The shadows remained, but they hesitated now, seeming to study me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Unlock the past. The voice echoed in my mind again, clearer this time. It felt like a command and a plea. They wanted me to act. But act how? I gripped the locket in my hand, grounding myself. One of the figures stepped forward, its face twisting in a scream that wouldn't escape its lips. It pointed again at the orb, with an urgency that sent a shiver down my spine. I realized they weren't just wanting me to take it. They were hoping I could understand it. But before I could formulate another thought, a chilling gust swept through the chamber, causing the shadows to swirl. They began to whisper again, this time in a voice I could almost understand. Free us. The orb began to dim, filling the chamber with a growing darkness. I could feel the air tightening around me, pressing in as panic clawed at me. I felt my heart quicken. What do you mean? I yelled, but no one answered. Then from the depths of the shadows, a new figure emerged. This one was different. Taller, more defined, almost regal in stance. It raised a hand, and the ambient energy pooled around its fingers. The truth binds us, it said, its voice low and powerful. The orb flickered weakly, its glow fading as I stared at the new arrival. I knew that I had to make a choice, and quickly. I had to unlock whatever truth held these figures captive. But how? Then the memories surged again, images merging to show a wisp of light connecting the orb to the new figure's hand. A bridge of fate. My breath caught. It was all connected, but I still didn't know exactly how. The chamber felt smaller as the shadows closed in. I had to act. There was no time left to ponder. What is the truth? I asked, my voice trembling. Claim your destiny, the regal figure proclaimed, before it's too late. I felt the walls trembling beneath me. Something was coming, and I realized with a jolt that time was running out. I had to figure out how to unlock the truth before the shadows consumed us all. The air thickened with tension, and for a moment I couldn't tell what was real anymore. My heart raced. The shadows hovered just beyond me, their whispers growing louder, mixing with the pounding in my ears. I had to decide fast. Claim your destiny, the figure had said. But how was I supposed to do that? I glanced back at the orb. It pulsed weakly, a faint light fighting against the darkness that crept ever closer. I felt a strange pull toward it, as if it were beckoning me to risk everything. I hesitated, then stepped forward. "Stay back," the regal figure commanded. Its eyes burned with urgency. "You must not touch it again yet." The warning echoed in my mind. I stared at it, feeling both drawn and repelled by its energy. "What do I do?" I asked. "How do I unlock the truth?" The figure pointed at the wall behind it. "You must remember, it is in the carvings." I turned to face the wall it indicated. My heart raced again, but not just from fear. That same symbol I'd seen in the orb's visions glinted back at me. It was prominent among the carvings, yet I couldn't fully grasp its meaning. As the shadows flickered impatiently, I took a step closer to the markings. They seemed to shimmer in the scarce light. They had a rhythm, a pattern, or maybe they were trying to tell me something in a language I didn't understand. "Please, help me," I shouted at the shadowed figures. "What do you want from me?" Silence loomed heavy. Then one of the figures pointed at the locket I still clenched in my fist. I glanced down at it. The locket felt oddly warm against my skin, contrasting with the chill in the air. Maybe the truth was within it too. But what if it was the same as the orb? Dangerous? "Open it!" the regal figure insisted, urgency escalating. I took a shaky breath and carefully unclasped the locket. Inside, a small, folded piece of parchment rested. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. The writing was small and jagged, a message, but its meaning swirled in my mind like a riddle. "Blood is the bond that frees the lost," it read. What does that mean? Frustration welled inside me. I felt like I was on the edge of a cliff, teetering dangerously. Lost thoughts raced through my mind. Suddenly, I glanced back toward the orb. It was flickering violently now, as if it were sensing my hesitation. The shadows began to stir again, restless. "Time is running out," they hissed. My heart dropped. The chamber felt brighter, yet my instincts screamed that danger was close. "Blood," I whispered, confusion overwhelming me. If it meant my blood, what would that cost me? But before I could think further, the chamber trembled violently. Dark tendrils shot toward me, dragging me toward the orb. My instincts kicked in. I couldn't become a prisoner of this dark fate. "Help! I need help!" I shouted. But echo after echo returned my voice, leaving me feeling more alone than ever. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the feeling of being yanked forward. A blinding light reaching for me, and that voice again in my mind growing louder. Unlock the past. Then, nothing. I woke up gasping, the air rushing into my lungs like a tidal wave. The chamber was gone. I was sprawled on a cold, damp ground surrounded by trees. Moonlight filtered through the branches overhead, casting ghostly shadows. I rubbed my eyes, trying to make sense of my surroundings. My heart pounded against my rib cage. "Where am I?" I murmured to myself, still disoriented. The memory of the dark chamber flashed in my mind. The orb, the regal figure, the shadows. I lifted my head and scanned the clearing. There was no sign of the figures or the orb. Just silence. It felt wrong. Something was off. I pushed myself to sit up and noticed something glinting on the ground near me. I crawled closer and reached for it. It was the locket. Somehow, it had followed me here. I could see my reflection in the metal. My face was pale, eyes wide with confusion. I turned the locket over, remembering the message. Blood is the bond that frees the lost. A shiver crept down my spine. Was I lost? My fingers brushed against the parchment inside. Should I read it again? Maybe it held more clues. I opened it one more time, but the message stayed the same. I folded it back and tucked it safely into my pocket. Just then, a soft rustling broke the silence. I froze, straining to listen. It came from behind me. My breath hitched as I turned slowly. There was something in the shadows, a figure watching me. "Who are you?" I croaked, trying to sound braver than I felt. The silhouette stepped forward, revealing a girl my age with tousled dark hair and piercing green eyes. "I'm Mia," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "You're not supposed to be here." "What do you mean? Where is here?" She took a cautious step closer. You're outside the veil. The orb sent you here, but it was not safe for you. The veil? My head spun. What orb? What do you know about it? Her gaze hardened. You shouldn't have touched it. It's a trap. You've been marked now. Marked? I felt ice grip my stomach. By what? Why? By the shadows, she said, her voice lowering. They want you, but the orb is the key. She paused, biting her lip like she was debating how much to tell me. But you need to be careful. You're caught between worlds now. What are you talking about? I asked, trying to keep up. Those who touch the orb risk becoming its pawn. It draws power from fear and blood. She hesitated, eyes darkening. It needs a sacrifice. My heart raced again. There it was, the blood part. I can't, no, I won't sacrifice anything. Mia stepped closer, desperation creeping into her voice. You don't understand. If you don't claim your destiny, they will come for you. It's only a matter of time. Before I could respond, I heard it, a soft but distinct whisper surrounding me. Unlock the past. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, creeping toward us. My heart pounded in my ears. What do we do? I shouted, panic ripping through me. Follow me! Mia grabbed my arm and started running. I had no choice but to follow, the shadows closing in behind us. The night felt darker than ever. We tore through the underbrush, branches scratching at my skin as I struggled to keep up with Mia. Her instincts seemed sharper than mine, guiding us through the darkness as the whispers crescendoed around us. I could almost feel the shadows reaching out, brushing my arms with icy fingers, urging me to turn back. Where are we going? I gasped, breathless. To the edge of the veil. It's the only way, she replied, darting to the right into a narrow path flanked by towering trees. Panic surged within me. But what will happen if we reach it? What about the orb? Don't think about the orb, she commanded, her eyes fixed ahead. It's a trap, and we don't have time to waste. I was torn. The orb felt like the key to this madness, yet Mia's words weighed heavily. We pushed deeper into the night, and the murmurs behind us grew louder, angry and frantic. My heart raced, and I could feel a raw energy surging in the air. It was as if the forest itself was alive with foreboding. Suddenly we emerged into a clearing, moonlight flooding the space. The atmosphere shifted, cool and charged. In the center was a colossal tree, ancient and twisted, roots extending like veins into the earth. A familiar pull emanated from it, as if it were connected to the very essence of the forest. This is it, Mia breathed. The edge of the veil. I hesitated, taking in the sight. The air shimmered, oscillating, a barrier barely visible. It felt like a threshold to another world, pulsating with an eerie energy. I turned to Mia. What do we do now? Call to it. The bond you share with the orb. It connects you to this place. It needs that memory to break the veil. What if... I started. But before I could finish, shadows converged from the darkness, their figures shifting and swirling in anticipation. Now, Mia urged, stepping closer to the pulsating barrier. With a shaky breath, I reached out. I unlock the past to change the future, I shouted, drawing upon all my courage. The words felt ancient, resonating with me, merging with the energy in the air. As I spoke, a light burst from my locket, illuminating the clearing. The shadows recoiled, screeching with rage as the barrier pulsed brighter, a shimmering wall separating us from the lurking darkness. Keep going, Mia yelled, her own voice drowned out by the chaos. Don't stop. The figures advanced, desperate to reach us. I grasped the locket tightly in my hand, feeling its warmth spreading through my palm. I free the lost. I unlock the truth. The space quaked and branches swayed violently. A howl echoed through the clearing, shattering the night. Suddenly, a wave of wind surged toward us with a vengeance, tearing through the clearing, scattering dust and leaves in a wild dance. The trees creaked as if the forest was protesting. Light exploded around us, and I felt the pull of the orb in my mind, images flashing, about the sacrifices made, the binding, the history of souls trapped in the shadows. My voice rang out louder than the wails, stronger than the echoes yanked from my mind. Blood is the bond that frees the lost, I screamed. And in that moment, I understood. It didn't need my blood. It needed recognition of the pain, acknowledgement of those ensnared by fear. A blinding white light erupted from the locket. The shadows halted, swirling inward, pulled toward the brightness as the veil began to tear. I felt it then. Release, liberation, echoes of the lost erupting with fragmented cries of relief and anguish. Mia gripped my arm tighter as the ground vibrated beneath us, the energy shifting and boiling over. "Keep it going! They're breaking free!" As I chanted, my words transformed into a humble prayer, calling forth the forgotten. The oppressive weight began to lift. The sinister whispers shifted to cries of hope. The shadows, once looming predators, shivered on the precipice of change, hesitant and confused. Then just like that it subsided. The clearing erupted with a mixed chorus of screams and cheers, of lost souls finally finding their passage home. I could feel the connection vibrating all around me, and the light burst forth, the veil fully collapsing, exposing a new realm bathed in moonlight. What just happened? I gasped, breathless, blinking in disbelief. Mia's expression held a mixture of awe and relief, her eyes glistening like the stars above. "You did it. You unlocked the truth of the past. They're freed, and so are we." But as I glanced back, I caught the faintest glimpse of the figures that had once haunted me, skirting the edge of sight. Were they truly gone, or simply retreating into the shadows? As the forest sighed, wrapping around us, I couldn't shake the feeling of lingering uncertainty, questions remaining unanswered. The locket in my grasp felt cool now, almost lifeless, yet still a reminder of what we had faced. Mia turned to me with a knowing look. "You know this isn't the end." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know." With the night settling back into its usual hush, I felt an unsettling mix of peace and apprehension. Part of me was free, but a nagging thought echoed in my mind. What had I really unleashed? I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if the veil truly closed, if those shadows still lurk. But mostly I try not to think about it.